He's sitting on the edge of his bed, shoes still on, backpack untouched, eyes fixed on the floor. And whether you realize it or not, the next 10 seconds matter more than anything you say tomorrow. Because before the age of 8, a boy's brain is quietly deciding which emotional responses will stay with him for life and which ones will disappear forever. This isn't philosophy, it's biology. In early childhood, the brain strengthens emotional patterns that get repeated and removes the ones that don't. Neuroscientists call it synaptic pruning. Whatever gets practiced sticks. Whatever gets ignored fades. And during this window, a father's influence is stronger than it will ever be again. Not louder, not stricter, stronger. Between roughly ages 6 and 8, children move through a critical developmental transition. Psychologists call it the 5 to 7 shift. It's when magical thinking gives way to logic, when the world stops feeling limitless and starts feeling real. The boy who once believed he could do anything begins to understand that some things are hard, that some things hurt, that failure exists. And at the same time, he begins to see his father not as a superhero, but as a human being. And that's when the watching intensifies. Because now, he's not just listening to what you say, he's studying how you respond to disappointment, how you handle mistakes, whether emotions are allowed or dangerous, whether love is steady or something that must be earned. The beliefs formed here don't stay in childhood, they wire themselves into adulthood. What follows aren't parenting hacks, they're developmental realities. 8 lessons research consistently shows matter most during this window, not because they're easy, but because they're neurologically formative. And once this window begins to close, reshaping these patterns becomes much harder. Lesson 1. Emotional literacy, not emotional suppression. The first lesson is simple and often resisted. Feelings are information, not weakness. Decades of research on emotional intelligence show that boys who can identify and name what they feel, anger, frustration, sadness, fear, develop stronger self-control and healthier relationships later in life. They're less likely to explode under pressure, more likely to ask for what they need, better equipped to navigate conflict without aggression. But many boys are never given the language. So when he's sitting there on the bed, eyes down, backpack still on, that moment matters more than any future lecture about toughness. If the response is, "Shake it off," or "It's not a big deal," the message is clear. What you feel isn't welcome here. But if the response is, "That sounds rough," or "Do you want to talk about it?" Even if he shrugs or says no, the lesson shifts. It says, "Your inner world exists, and I'm not afraid of it." That's where synaptic pruning matters most. The pathways he practices now, naming emotions instead of burying them, expressing instead of exploding, become his defaults. Lesson 2. Respect is demonstrated, not declared. Respect isn't taught through speeches, it's absorbed through observation. Developmental psychology shows that children internalize behavioral norms long before they can explain them. What feels normal at home becomes normal everywhere. Online, in locker rooms, in relationships years from now. When he hears how you talk about someone who cut you off in traffic, he's learning what's acceptable. When he watches how you respond to a server's mistake. When he hears how you describe people who think differently or live differently. These aren't teachable moments, they're absorbed moments. Here's what happens when this lesson is missing. Boys raised around casual disrespect often don't recognize cruelty when they see it. They don't view themselves as unkind, they see themselves as normal. Respect doesn't require agreement. It requires recognizing that another person's dignity doesn't depend on how they make you feel. Lesson 3. Courage without cruelty. Old ideas about toughness don't hold up under research. Studies on peer development show that empathy reduces aggression more effectively than punishment ever could. So when he hesitates before standing up for a classmate and glances at you, that look isn't weakness, it's wisdom. He's asking a question that will shape how he uses power for the rest of his life. Is protecting someone braver than dominating them? Is walking away from an unnecessary fight strength or failure? Your response doesn't need to be a lecture. It might be a nod, a quiet, "I saw that," a hand on the shoulder later. Because what he's really learning is this: what kind of man earns my father's respect? The first 3 lessons shape how he sees himself. The next 3 shape how he responds when life gets hard. Lesson 4: responsibility and the gift of failure. When he forgets his homework and you rush it to school, it feels loving. But here's the lesson he actually learns: mistakes don't have consequences. Discomfort is optional. Someone will always rescue me. Research on executive function, the brain system responsible for self-regulation, shows that children who experience natural consequences develop stronger problem-solving skills and better impulse control. When he forgets his homework and has to face his teacher, he learns that discomfort is survivable. When he breaks something and helps repair it, he learns that mistakes are solvable, not catastrophic. Fast forward 15 years. The man hiding a mistake at work didn't learn that instinct there. He learned it here, when rescue felt like love but was actually avoidance. Responsibility isn't about making a child feel bad. It's about making him feel capable. Lesson 5: persistence over perfection. The bike tips over again. He looks back, not for help, but for permission. The question he's asking will shape the next 20 years. Is struggling acceptable, or does struggling mean I'm failing? Growth mindset research shows this moment matters more than success itself. Boys praised for effort rather than outcomes develop stronger long-term motivation. They take on challenges more willingly. They tolerate discomfort. They recover faster from setbacks. And the brain is still deciding which belief to keep, that persistence earns respect or that only perfection does. Lesson 6: asking for help is strength. Social emotional research contradicts one of the most damaging messages boys absorb without ever hearing it spoken. Needing help isn't weakness, it's awareness. When he whispers from the hallway late at night because something feels too big, a fear, a question, a worry, the response becomes a template. Dismissal teaches silence. Presence teaches connection. Without this foundation, boys often grow into men who isolate under pressure, who avoid asking for guidance, who interpret vulnerability as inadequacy. But asking for help isn't dependence, it's a skill, and skills must be practiced early, before shame hardens around them. The final 2 lessons determine whether he merely survives hard seasons or grows through them. Lesson 7: gratitude and perspective. Positive psychology consistently links early gratitude practices to long-term resilience. Not pretending everything is fine, but learning to notice what's working alongside what isn't. When the house is quiet and you ask, "What was one good thing today?" Even if it takes time to answer, you're building something. You're teaching that difficulty and goodness can coexist, that a hard day can still hold something worth remembering. Boys who learn this aren't naive. They're resilient because they understand that attention is powerful and where it goes matters. Lesson 8: love without conditions. This one lasts the longest. When he's messed up, lost control, broken a rule, and he's bracing himself, what happens next will echo longer than any punishment. Because in that moment, he isn't learning whether he's forgiven. He's learning whether he's forgivable. Attachment theory is clear. Boys who experience conditional love spend adulthood chasing approval that was never actually at risk. They tie worth to achievement. They measure themselves constantly. They never feel enough. But boys who experience steady love, even in failure, develop a security that doesn't crack under pressure. This doesn't mean there are no consequences. It means correction comes with connection, accountability without contempt. The research shows a clear divide. Boys who believe love depends on performance often become men who never rest. Boys who know love is steady become men who lead with confidence. Years from now, when he's 30 or 40, facing fear, leading others, or sitting across from his own child, the voice he hears won't be his. It will be yours. Not the words, but the tone, the patience, the steadiness you showed when he didn't believe in himself. Memory research confirms this. Emotional tone outlasts detail. Psychologists call it intergenerational transmission. Fathers call it legacy. But really, it's simple. The story he tells himself when no one is watching is being written now, before age 8. These lessons aren't about raising a perfect child. They're about shaping the inner voice he carries into every hard moment. And the science doesn't demand perfection from you either. It highlights the power of repair. When a father falls short and owns it, he teaches responsibility and unconditional love at the same time. He shows that mistakes aren't endings, that apologies matter, that integrity includes accountability. Developmental science is clear. Consistent presence matters more than flawless execution. A father who shows up, who tries, who repairs when he misses the mark, that father is enough. The window is short. The brain will never be this open again. And every small moment, every pause, every choice to stay steady still counts. So here's the only question that matters. Which one lesson will you practice this week? Not all 8, just one. Because small moments, repeated with intention, are how entire lives are shaped.